Today, let's reopen the time capsule with me to discover 25 old-fashioned household tips, the secrets that not only maintained family happiness, but also helped them overcome the Great Depression. The miracle of white vinegar. Let's start by using vinegar as a cleaning agent. Imagine you're walking into a grocery store in 1952. Instead of being overwhelmed by dozens of shelves full of colorful bottles, all sorts of specialized chemicals like today, you would only see a large jug of white vinegar sitting quietly on the shelf. That time, a gallon jug of vinegar cost only a few cents, but it was the Swiss Army knife of house cleaning. The most common formula was mixing 1 part vinegar with 3 or 4 parts water in repurposed old spray bottles. With this concentration, vinegar could remove stubborn grease on the stove, clean soap scum buildup in the bathtub, and make window panes shine to an astonishing degree. The truly miraculous point of vinegar lies not just in its cleaning ability. Although the initial sour smell is quite strong and sharp, it disappears quickly after a few minutes, leaving a surface that is not only shiny, but also naturally disinfected. In old families, vinegar was trusted because it was safe and free of toxic industrial chemicals found in later products. Repurposing toothbrushes for scrubbing. Old toothbrushes always had a second life in 1950s homes. These tiny brushes wound their way into places that almost nothing else could reach. The grooves around sink drains, sliding window tracks, or the intricate crevices of jewelry. Most houses had a collection of old brushes in various, from relatively new to frayed. Those newly retired were often used to apply polish to shoes, getting into every fold of the leather. More worn brushes could clean tile grout or typewriter keyboards. Specifically, the most ragged ones took on dirtier jobs, such as cleaning battery terminals and engines or scrubbing garden tools. Some families even marked each one with nail polish or trimmed the bristles to easily distinguish between brushes used for the mouth and home industry brushes. In 1950, a new toothbrush cost only about 25 cents, but its utility value lasted for many years, many times over its initial mission. Turning old bread into delicious dishes. In true 1950s to 60s families, bread was never seen as expired food. Once a loaf of bread entered the kitchen, it would be cherished down to the very last crumb. When bread began to dry out, hard slices were cut into small cubes, mixed with a bit of saved bacon grease or rare butter, added with a pinch of garlic powder, and then put in the oven or toasted in a pan. Soon, golden, crispy croutons were born, filling the kitchen with aroma, tasting more delicious and warm than any canned food. With even older loaves, they were reborn into dishes that nourished the whole family. Bread was torn into pieces, mixed with milk, eggs, and a bit of sugar, and baked into a sweet pudding for the kids. During the toughest times, when coffee was a luxury, bread was even toasted until black, crushed, and mixed with hot water to create bread coffee. It was not just a way to save money, but also a deep respect for food, for labor, and for the very life they were trying to preserve every day. Making broth from leftovers. The broth pot, also known as a stock pot, was always the warm heart of the 1950s kitchen. Every leftover bone from the Sunday meat meal, carrot tops, celery leaves, or onion skins were cherished and put into the pot. Chicken or duck carcasses were cooked slowly until they were soft enough to be broken by hand. This was not just a way to extend food, it was also a way to hold onto precious flavors and nutrients. Families would strain the broth pot weekly, using it for soups, sauces, or even for cooking rice or beans, while the remaining residue was converted into poultry feed or garden fertilizer. Some families kept a perpetual broth pot, adding water and scraps every day so the flavor would gradually become richer. A good broth pot turned cheap ingredients into hearty meals. Rice as soft as risotto, dry bread into stuffing, and tough meat into tender stew. Before convenient seasonings appeared, homemade broth was the foundation of flavor for many meals. Simmering potato peels for soup. While potato peels are often thrown away today, there was a time when they were liquid gold that fed entire families. During the Great Depression extending into the 1960s, a pot of potato peel soup was not due to lack, but a testament to creativity and a self-respecting lifestyle. Potato peel fragments after every meal were never discarded. They were carefully gathered, put into a lidded pot, stored in the freezer compartment of the icebox or a cool corner of the basement. On Sundays after the church service, the peels were brought out and washed to begin a miraculous rebirth. The woman of the family simmered them with other kitchen scraps, onion bits, celery leaves, or carrot ends. To add richness and energy, they would drop in a ham bone from the previous week's dinner or bacon bits saved from breakfast. It is amazing that today, modern nutritionists have confirmed what the older generations knew intuitively. Most of a potato's nutrients, including fiber, iron, and B vitamins, are in the peel. Ancient families were not just saving money, they were consuming the most quintessential parts of the plant that we often miss today. Reusing tea bags multiple times. In the small homes of the 50s to 60s, where life was full of scarcity and everything was cherished like a piece of an estate, a tea bag was never something used once and discarded. A tiny tea bag could brew 2 or even 3 cups of water. The first cup was rich. The later ones gradually became weaker, but no one complained. When the tea brewing mission ended, the tea bag entered another life cycle. Carefully placed on a porcelain saucer and dried under the porch sun, it was ready to become a compress for dark circles under the eye while burning the midnight oil to calculate rice and stamp books. For active children, that warm tea bag was a folk remedy to soothe mild burns or scratches during tireless play sessions. It didn't stop there. Grandmothers and mothers also utilized strong black tea water to wipe mirrors and glass windows, as the tannins left every surface shiny and streak-free. That was how people of the 50s to 60s treated nature and life. No waste, no excess, and always trying to extract the final value from the simplest things. Does your family have any other saving tricks? Share below for everyone to learn. Coffee grounds for the garden? In every kitchen of the 50s, coffee grounds were never wasted. Most were taken straight to the garden, where they became nitrogen-rich food for acid-loving plants like tomatoes and roses. When mixed into the soil, coffee grounds help keep the soil loose and airy, attracting earthworms and other beneficial organisms. But coffee grounds didn't just live in the garden. Mixed with soap, they became a coarse hand cleaner, strong enough to strip grease in the garage or mud stuck to hands after gardening. Rubbed gently on scratches on brown wooden furniture, they hid small imperfections. Placed in the freezer, coffee grounds absorbed odors better than baking soda. Some families dried them completely to use as fire starters for the fireplace, while others mixed them with water to create a brown dye for craft items. With the price of a pound of coffee at about 75 cents in 1950, utilizing coffee grounds for multiple purposes helped stretch the budget and connect people with nature. Reusing rag bags from old clothes. Before disposable paper towels became a common kitchen item in the 1960s, old clothes had a second career as useful rags. Every family had a rag bag, usually placed under the sink or in the basement, filled with torn shirts, old bed sheets, and worn towels. When a father's work shirt wore out at the elbows, a mother would sit down with scissors and turn it into uniform square pieces of cloth. Cotton was used for dusting, flannel for polishing silver, and terry cloth withstood the toughest jobs in the kitchen. But rags weren't just for cleaning. Soft cotton became baby wipes, wool scraps turned into potholders, and the best pieces were kept for polishing shoes or brightening wooden furniture. An old bed sheet could create dozens of wiping cloths washed over and over for many years and hung in the sun for bleaching. This habit saved the family about $50 a year in the mid-50s, equivalent to nearly $500 today. Interestingly, those pieces of cloth cleaned better than paper, were more absorbent, did not shred, and reminded one of an entire era where every piece of fabric was cherished. Baking soda, the silent odor killer. There was a small item always present in every American kitchen, with a price of only 5 to 8 cents a box: baking soda. For people living in this decade, this was not simply a type of leavening powder, but a miraculous solution for dozens of problems arising in the family. The point that truly made this powder miraculous was its ability to neutralize odor molecules instead of just using artificial fragrances to mask them like modern air freshener products today. They often sprinkled the powder into the father's work boots every evening to deodorize the smell after a long day of hard labor, then shook it out the next morning. Mothers also added a little powder to the cloth diaper pail to reduce ammonia smells, or sprinkled a layer at the bottom of ashtrays to keep the living room from smelling like smoke. This secret was so effective and safe that even luxury hotels today continue to trust baking soda as the most specialized carpet deodorizing method. Its silence but persistence is a testament to a wise lifestyle. No need for noise, just substance. Aluminum foil. In the 60s, foil was never considered a disposable item. It was cherished and treated like real silver. After being used to cover a stew or wrap leftovers, instead of crumpling it and throwing it in the trash, they would carefully smooth out every wrinkle, wash it gently with warm, soapy water, and then hang it on a line to dry. This meticulousness was even elevated to an art of organization when many families dedicated a specific drawer to store used foil pieces, categorized by size and condition. The flattest pieces, with almost no wrinkles, would be saved solemnly for parties with guests. Older pieces would be used as pot scrubbers or crumpled into metal balls to scrub stubborn cast iron pans. During the World War II era, this habit held a meaning more sacred than just ice saving. It was patriotism. When aluminum was a strategic material for aircraft, reusing every piece of foil was the way families contributed to the common effort. Children were taught to open bread packages carefully, fold the foil flat, and bring it home for their mothers to continue using. Not because of poverty, but as a lesson in respecting resources and labor. A value that shaped an entire generation. Thank you for following. Soap and shampoo at home. Before the era when chemical cosmetic bottles appeared densely on store shelves, making soap and cleaning agents was a very normal thing in many families. Once a year, usually in the cool season, they would build a fire in the yard and place large pots on it to begin soap-making day. Pork fat and beef tallow were collected throughout the year, carefully stored in old coffee cans. When the time came, that amount of fat was cooked together with water and lye extracted from wood ash. This stage required high caution because just one careless move could cause a burn, but in return, the finished products were rustic bars of soap that were durable and enough for the whole family for many months. Besides soap, various cleaning liquids were also prepared according to word-of-mouth formulas, almost never written down. Some families used chicken eggs mixed with lemon juice and a few drops of essential oil for cleaning. Others diluted Castile soap and then rinsed with vinegar to clean. Compared to buying outside, these homemade products cost almost nothing. In 1950, with only the amount of money to buy one ready-made bar of soap, people could make dozens of bars for long-term use. Treasures from glass jars. Before plastic became a familiar item in the kitchen, glass jars were always cherished like treasures. In families accustomed to living frugally, a glass jar was never something to be thrown away. Each jar, whether it held jam, pickles, or sauce, was washed clean, dried, and carefully stored to be used many times. Remembering the old days in the warehouse or basement, small jars were turned upside down under shelves, becoming storage places for nails, screws, and miscellaneous metal items. One only needed to glance to see exactly what was needed. As for the kitchen, large jars took on a different role, holding flour, sugar, and rice to keep food dry and avoid pests. Over time, glass jars became more versatile, as flower vases or lunch boxes to take away. Beautiful jars with intact lids were often set aside. Each jar seemed to carry a small story. Before plastic containers appeared densely in the 1960s, glass jars were the most popular storage choice. Free, durable, and not retaining unpleasant odors. Making candles at home. In the 1950s, when electricity was still a luxury and unstable in rural areas, homemade candles were an indispensable source of light. Even in small towns, many families kept the habit of making candles both for decoration and to save costs. Every leftover candle wax scrap was carefully collected and stored in old coffee tins until there was enough to make new candle. Wicks were made from cotton thread, twisted and soaked in salt water to burn evenly and not go out halfway. Candle molds were simple but creative. Milk cartons, tin cans, or even small holes in a sandbox could become molds to create candles with interesting shapes. Wax scraps from parties, decorative candles on the dining table, or old candles were all gathered. Children also participated, using colors to draw patterns or pressing dried flowers into the candles, creating candles that were both simple and beautiful. In 1955, a pound of wax was only about 15 cents, but most families rarely bought it new. They lived on carefully saved wax scraps. Using salt to keep food fresh. Before refrigerators became familiar items in every kitchen, salt was a powerful friend, protecting food for families in the 60s. Meat was heavily covered in salt, vegetables were soaked in brine to be moderately sour, and fish was salted to preserve fresh flavor. This method required a massive amount of salt, sometimes nearly equal to the weight of the food, but salt was cheap, and the result was long-lasting, potentially keeping for months. On occasions when pork prices dropped, families would buy it, cover it with a thick layer of salt, and hang it in the storehouse, letting the meat slowly turn into savory ham. Even eggs were kept in salt mixtures called liquid glass, where moisture was sucked away, creating an environment where bacteria could not live. This was not just a survival skill from the Depression era. Many families still kept salt preservation methods until the 1960s because their flavor was incomparable to frozen food. A 50-pound bag of salt in 1950, priced at about $1, could preserve hundreds of pounds of food and keep an unforgettable homemade flavor. Meat stretching techniques with fillers. When meat was still the most precious dish on the dining table, Skillful homemakers found ways to turn each small piece of meat into a full meal for more people. A pound of ground beef, which was only enough for 4 people, could become food for 8 thanks to simple but smart secrets. Breadcrumbs, cereal, or crushed crackers were mixed with an egg to bind, while grated vegetables like carrots, potatoes, or zucchini increased volume and maintained moisture. Everything was seasoned richly, so each piece of meat was still full of flavor, regardless of the actual small amount of meat. Not just for meatloaf or meatballs, burger patties were also formed ethereal, thinly, and grilled carefully to maintain their shape. A pound of meat, a cup of breadcrumbs, an egg, and a bit of onion were sometimes enough for 8 decent portions. In truly difficult days, meat was even replaced with more fillers, while stews became the ideal vehicle to spread flavor. A little meat was enough to fragrance an entire plate of noodles, rice, or potatoes. These small tips helped each family save significantly in the 1950s, potentially up to $10 a month, equivalent to nearly $150 today, while still ensuring protein-rich, delicious, and full meals. Which tip in the video reminds you of your grandmother or mother the most? Please name it. Windowsill herb garden. Sunny windowsills in the kitchen were always the birthplace of precious small gardens for 1960s families. Each fresh green leaf brightened up simple dishes. Just a few mint leaves were enough to make tomato sauce delicious, and a pinch of parsley for soup or mashed potatoes provided precious vitamins during freezing winter days. To have those gardens, one only needed a few cents worth of seeds or sprouts exchanged between neighbors. A small parsley plant could nourish meals for months if cared for carefully. Children enjoyed old coffee tins, painting on them and then placing them on the window as planters, making the kitchen both pleasing to the eye and full of life. These windowsills were not just about saving money, but were also where real flavor was created. Fresh herbs were rare in the markets back then, so growing them yourself brought joy and a difference to daily meals. A few pinches of grass leaves, a few green parsley plants could already replace several dollars spent on buying vegetables in the market. Utilizing leftover fat for storage. In the kitchen, coffee tins full of grease were the treasures of American families in the 60s. Lard, still hot, was carefully poured into tins near the stove, giving off a familiar aroma. Poultry fat and beef tallow were all kept and stored carefully for gradual use. They replaced expensive butter and oil, bringing a warm flavor into every dish. Vegetables cooked in poultry fat became soft and sweet, eggs fried in lard were golden, and cakes made from stored fat had an unforgettable rich taste, different from later low-fat dishes. But fat was not just for cooking. When mixed with flour, it turned into a base for sauces. When meeting lye, it became rustic soap. Spread on bread during times of need, it provided energy when butter was too expensive. Even clean fat helped polish boots and repair old leather items. Lard tins near the stove, brown and round, became a symbol of the American kitchen, a place where saving met creativity, and every dish contained the love and skill of the cook. Homemade cold packs. In American families during the 50s to 60s, cold packs on the market rarely appeared, but ingenuity always replaced everything. People created at-home solutions with wonderful creativity. A piece of sponge soaked in water, placed in a plastic bag, and then put in the freezer, became a soft cold pack that hugged a small wound. Some families used rubber gloves filled with water. The frozen fingers became precise cold application points. Some people even tried frozen peas or corn, discovering they still maintained flexibility, were easy to adjust, and extremely handy. For a longer-lasting cold feeling, a few families mixed 1 part rubbing alcohol with 3 parts water and put it in a sturdy bag. This mixture froze but remained slushy, ideal for sprains. The beauty was that everything could be customized. Need a small spot treated? A frozen wet cloth would be fine. A frozen wet towel would complete the task. Compared to $3 to $5 for a store-bought cold pack in 1960, the homemade version cost only a few cents, was infinitely reusable, and bore the mark of the family's skill and economy. Sewing clothes from old curtains. Turning old curtains into new clothes was a common occurrence in families during the 50s to 60s, when fabric was still a precious thing. Radiant kitchen curtains could become summer dresses for small children, while thicker curtains were transformed into coats for winter. Fabric from curtains was often more durable and beautiful than the new fabric a family could buy. Many curtains from the 40s were almost indestructible, making them an ideal material source for self-sewn clothing. A child's dress needed about 2 yards of fabric. In 1950, the material cost could be from $3 to $4. Made from old curtains, the cost dropped to almost zero, only taking time and effort. Mothers took down the curtains, washed the fabric, and used patterns from newspapers or copied existing clothing. Reusing curtain fabric was so common that no one found it odd when dresses or shirts were made from them. Even skillfully sewn dresses were praised more than new clothes. This habit was maintained until the 60s, giving way to cheap, ready-made clothes from abroad. Patching roofs with pitch. Patching a roof with pitch was a familiar job in families during the 50s to 60s, as hiring professional workers often exceeded their ability to pay. The work was simple but required meticulousness. First, clean the leak points, then apply pitch very thickly, sometimes combined with small pieces of cloth or metal sheets to increase durability. On flat roofs, pitch was spread using old brooms, creating a new dry layer. As for tiled roofs, pitch was heated before flowing into the gaps. On sunny weekends, the whole family would often gather on the roof, applying hot pitch, but knowing that a good patch could keep the roof intact for many years. These DIY patches helped families save hundreds of dollars, as professional roofing at that time cost from $300 to $500 US. These pitch patches might not match the color of the old tiles, but they protected property and left money for other needs in the family. Many roofs still stood firm for decades thanks to these simple but effective DIY patches. Out of the 20 tips above, are there any that you are still using daily? Share with us in the comments section. Air freshener from citrus peels. In the kitchens of the 50s to 60s, the warm smell of orange and cinnamon was a sign of a house full of life, especially on winter days or holidays. Instead of running to the store to buy air freshener, families created fragrances from orange peels, lemon peels, and spices, making the home warm from simple ingredients. Orange and lemon peels were never thrown away hastily. They were gathered, placed on the stove along with cinnamon sticks and a few cloves to slowly spread a warm scent throughout the house. Some families even created orange pomanders by sticking cloves into the peel. These spheres were not only beautiful but also gave off a persistent scent for many months. Lemon peels were also used to clean and deodorize garbage disposals, cutting boards, and fireplaces, while the essential oils from the peels also helped wood shine when rubbed directly. A can of air freshener in 1960 cost 49 cents and lasted about a month, while citrus peels from daily meals could create fragrance year-round, bringing a fresh fruit and natural spice smell that artificial sprays do not have. Vinegar as fabric softener. Before bottles of fabric softener appeared on shelves in the 1960s, vinegar took on that role at a surprisingly low cost. Just half a cup of vinegar added to the wash water helped completely remove remaining soap bits, leaving clothes soft, non-sticky, and pleasant to wear. Unlike commercial fabric softeners with artificial chemical scents, vinegar kept garments naturally clean. It was especially useful for towels, helping to restore absorbency that was reduced by layers of soap. Mothers also discovered that the acid in vinegar helped keep new clothes from fading and brightened yellow stains on white fabric. Clothes with cigarette smoke smells, dampness, or sweat odors washed with vinegar became fresh and new. With a price of about 30 cents a gallon in 1950, vinegar could soften hundreds of laundry loads without costing anything else. When commercial fabric softeners appeared at $1.50 for about 20 loads, many families still stuck with vinegar because it was cheap more. Every penny was precious at a time when everything had to be saved. Over many years, glass jars filled with buttons of all colors and sizes became useful repair tools. When a shirt lost a button, the jar provided a near match immediately. Metal zippers were cherished and kept for future sewing projects because a good zipper could survive longer than several outfits. Children also learned how to sew by selecting and threading buttons from these jars, which was both fun and taught the necessary care for every item. Draft stoppers from old socks. In average American homes, draft stoppers made from socks and fabric scraps were a familiar sight every winter, keeping the house warm and reminding one of families who managed on their own from the 50s to 60s. Old socks, long stockings, or fabric tubes were stuffed with sand, rice, or wood shavings and placed against the door threshold to prevent cold air from entering. Some families even skillfully stuffed dried beans or wood chips into decorative fabric tubes, both keeping the house warm and repelling insects. These draft stoppers could help reduce heating costs by 10 to 15% in homes using oil or coal, equivalent to $5 to $10 US a month. Everything was surprisingly cheap. Sand from the yard, wood dust from woodworking projects, and old worn socks that could no longer be worn. Many families also renewed their draft stoppers every year, stuffing them with fabric scraps and old clothes from that season, which was both economical and created a meaningful family mission, turning things intended to be discarded into useful tools in a winter home. The art of mending. In the 1950s, when new clothes were not always cheap or easy to buy, mending was a given in every American family. Thin socks were sewn over and over to the point that many families joked that the thread on the sock was more than the original fabric. The knees of work pants were reinforced with 2 layers of fabric, and joints were reinforced with extra patches, all aimed at extending the life of the garment. A new pair of work pants cost about $3 equal to a day's wages for many workers, and keeping them for an extra year meant real savings. Thanks to these habits, garments lived for many seasons. Wedding dresses were passed down through generations. Work clothes follow. Thank you for watching. Please like, share the video, and subscribe to the Back to Yesterday channel so you don't miss the next nostalgic journeys.